Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another video for this series. And today we'll be looking at filtering our data using a where clause. In our where clause, we'll be looking at how to use logical to filter data, how we can use comparison operators to filter our data. So what we'll be doing, we'll be understanding the secret behind the where clause and how effective it can be when we want to filter to return only a subset of the record. So if you're ready, just join me as we go into the video to learn about a where clause. But if you missed the first video where we talk about how we can select um, all the records, all the columns, or subset of specific columns from a table, I need you to look at the description below. You will find the first video. I have a link for it that you can see the basics of how we can select a basic record from single table, and then you can see this video where we are talking about the where clause. So this video is built on top of another video which is more of extracting or retrieving record from single table. So join me as I share my screen and we'll go ahead to work on our SQL code. So down here we have our code of where we're going to be answering basic SQL questions. And the first question is right here for us to write or retrieve the list of appointments where the appointment status is listed as scheduled. So the first thing is to pinpoint to the database that we want to use. So we can say use the database that says Pauline's Data Tech, and I can put a go here. And this can give me the database that I need to use. So if I run this code now, it says the SQL code is completed, it's successful. I can easily go ahead and say, yes, now I am good to go. Now, what is a where clause? When we write our code, for example, I write my select, and maybe I use a select star from the table name, and this will return me all the entire record from the table. For example, if I have 2 million rows, it will return me all those 2 million rows with all the column. Now, if I take this to the next level and I say I don't want to return all the columns from the table, I only want to return a subset of the record. So I can look to return, let me say I want to return 3 columns, which is called column 1, column 2, and column 3. It will return me all the records, but just these 3 columns from that particular table. But right now, I do not want to get all the records. So if there are 2 billion rows, I don't need all the records. So if I want to return record where the genders are male, for example, I can come down here and say where. In where, in one of these column, if for example, column number 3 is the heading is called gender, and the content of that particular column is of various genders, right? And I am looking to only return only where the genders are male, for example. So what I can do, I can come down here and call the column 3. So it has to be the column name that is embedded in the table. Then if I am looking for where the column name, which is gender, is male, I can now say where it equals a male. So basically, by the left-hand side of the equal to sign, we have the column name. The right-hand side of the equal to sign, we have the content that is inside of the column name. And if it is a string, we use a single quote to surround that particular item that we are looking for. If it is a number, we do not need to put a single quote around it. So with this being done, let's use this idea to answer the question. The first question said we should write a query to retrieve a list of appointments from the appointments table that have the status as scheduled. So the idea here, as I've said in the first video, is that we always want to gain access to the table. We want to understand what the table is and what the content is and what are embedded inside of that table. So we can write select star from the table name, which is we'll call the schema dot table name. I call DBO dot appointment table. And if I run this code now to look and see what is inside of the table, I can see that I have this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever number of column that is listed here as the number. Now, this content of this particular columns, of this particular data, each one of them contain different types of information. So for the status that is being pointed, if we look at the status, we can see that status have scheduled, status have completed. If we look further, maybe we can see something else, but we have seen scheduled and completed. And at the end of the day, we have 32 appointments that has been made for these particular facilities. But we don't want to return all of them. We want to only return the ones where the status is completed. So like the example that I have here, I can come down here underneath the appointment and say something like where I call the column name just like the example I did here, where, remember, the left-hand side of the column name should be, sorry, the left-hand side of the equal to sign will be where your column name appears. The right-hand side of the equal to sign will be the content of that column. What is inside of the column, which is all these guys. So I come down here and I say status. Status equals, and what do I need? Where it says it is scheduled. So I can write scheduled, which is something that is underneath this column, which are all these guys. That is the secret of the where clause. So I put scheduled and put this. Remember, before the where clause, I have this number of rows, 82 rows. But now when I include the where clause into the code, let's see what we get. We get 72 rows. So with the where clause, we get 72 rows. That means something has left the original result, which tells us that there are 10 uncompleted appointments. Sorry, there are 10 completed appointments and 72 scheduled appointments. So moving on, let's go to another question. This question here is saying, I'll just put this result like this. This question here is asking for us to write a query that will retrieve the diagnosis date, the diagnosis code, the diagnosis name, the diagnosis the medication prescribed, that only shows where the severity of the diagnosis is mild. So that means inside of the diagnosis table, there is a column called severity. So let's see if that is true. The first rule is to write the select star to gain an understanding into the table. So I write select star from the one from the diagnosis table. So I write DBO dot diagnosis. And I run this code and I go through it, I can see the various columns that they are looking for. I can see the diagnosis date. I can see the diagnosis code. I can see diagnosis name. I can find somewhere I can see the medication prescribed. And somewhere there is a severity and I can see the severity of this diagnosis. And then looking at it, I can see something that it looks like there is a mild. So I don't need all these 45 diagnoses that was made. So there are 45 rules that was pulled out of this code. But we don't need all the 45 because right here in the severity, we have mild, we have moderate, and we have severe, right? But we don't need all of them. because of maybe the report that we are working on at that particular time do not include that. So we can go on and say, let's get to the requirement that they want us to return. They want us to return the diagnosis name, sorry, the diagnosis date. Diagnosis date. They want us to return the diagnosis code. Let's keep putting diagnosis code. They want us to also return the diagnosis name. They also want us to return the medication that was prescribed for that diagnosis. And I now run the code like this, and I can see that I only have those subset of the column that they want me to return in part of this result set. But now they don't want all the result, because this is combining all the severity that is on the code. But they want me to only return where the severity of this particular information, the severity of this particular information is mild. So because the mild is a string, I can use a single quote, and I call the mild with another single quote, and I close the single quote. And now if I run it, formerly I got 45 rows, I can now see that it has reduced to 17 rows, which tells us that every other ones other than 17 rows out of the 45 are either severe or I don't remember the other one, but you get the idea. So that is what it is doing. But 17 rows out of this 45 diagnoses are mild. Okay, so let's move on again to keep writing this code in different. So the idea here is to give us different flavor on how we can work with this. Now we have another one. The question here is we should write a query to retrieve the medical condition, the family medical history, a treatment plan that has been given to this particular situation, and the test result that was obtained from the medical history table. But they want us to limit our results to where the result is either normal or scheduled for surgery, the test result. So the first thing we do, we need to see what is inside of the table. So by doing that, we have to go into say from, and we call the medical history table, DBO dot medical history table. And if we run this code, we can see useful information that can give us some kind of knowledge as we go on. We can see other columns, and what they are looking for is where the test result is either normal or scheduled for surgery. And if we scan through this table, we can see something called test result. And the data that they are looking for is normal, and another one should be scheduled for surgery. They don't need all these other guys. That is what they're looking for. So what I will do now is to answer the full question. The question said the medical history, sorry, the medical condition, and the family medical history, the treatment plan, and the test result. And if I run this code just to look at just the column that we just checked right now, we can actually see that these are the columns. And if we look at the test result, we have normal, positive for needs antibiotic, need dental fillings and all those stuff. But we don't need all those information. All we're looking for is the normal, and we are scheduled for surgery. How do we extract that? To extract that, because now remember, we have two things that we need to look for. It is not longer one. One of them, we can use the equal to sign. But now, because we're looking for two things, meaning equal to one column cannot equal to this and equal to another thing at the same time. So we need a different way for our query to behave to pull that record. And that is where we introduce something called in. It's just like there is a crowd of people and I am looking for a specific item in that crowd. Rather than me saying whatever I'm looking for will be in that crowd, I can say whatever I am looking for will could be in that crowd, so that if it is not there, it's still okay. I don't get disappointed. But if it is there, I will pick it up. But if I say specifically that that particular thing that I am looking for is in there, that means I am 100% certain. But what if it is not there? What will happen? So that is the idea. So we're going to make the code behave a little different. And this is how it works. Again, we're going to call our where clause. Then we'll call the severity, test result. Sorry, we'll call the test result. And now, instead of us to use an equal to sign, we come down here, we say where the test result is in. I open and close a parenthesis, and inside of the open and close parenthesis, I begin to throw in the required condition or the required item that they are looking for. The first one that they want me to look for is the normal, where the test result is normal. And again, so I'm going to list it like an item. Where the test result is normal, I do it, comma, and the next one they said where it is scheduled surgery. Close the parenthesis. So now what is this going to do? This test result will go into this. This is like the crowd that I mentioned earlier. This test result will go into here and begin to look for it. It's not sure if it's going to be there. There is no guarantee that we'll have anything called normal or scheduled surgery inside of the test result, but we're just checking just to make sure. So at this point, we'll come down here. If we run this code now, we can see that it went in and checked. Say, hey, I'm looking for normal. Is normal in this cloud? Normal came out and say, yes, I'm here. It took it. Hey, I'm looking for scheduled surgery. Is scheduled surgery in this cloud? Yes, I am here. It took it. Then at the end of the day, sorry, I didn't check the total record. So it's always good for me or for you to really see if your action is having an effect. So the original code without the where clause is 60 rows. It's 60 rows. And now when I add the condition to find only normal and scheduled surgery, I get 26 rows. Pretty remarkable, right? What the where clause can do for us. So moving on. The next thing they want us to check and write and return the first name, the last name, and the gender of the medical staffs that have specialization in oncology and pediatrics, right? So at this point, what it does, we just have to go in and write our code first of all to get into the medical staff table. So with that, I can come down here. I say select staff from my schema name. Remember, schema always important. Schema name dot medical staff, not history. Medical staff table. And when I run this guy, I can verify clearly that I have 70 rows as staff. So I have 70 staffs that are medical people. So you can put that 70 rows. Now, on this guy, on these 70 rows, I can look at it and say, okay, now I need the actual information that I am looking for. The first information is the first name. The second information is the last name. The third is the gender. And I can now run the code just because I have obtained those specific columns that I needed to run. And once that is done, I can see the 3 columns. But now they want me to only look for where the specialization is oncology and pediatrics. So what do? 70 rows, let's add our where clause. Remember now there are 2 columns. This question is good because we have another opportunity to look at how this thing works. So we come down here, we say where clause. And instead of this where clause, I come and say where the specialization not equal to. So let's try and gamble and see what will happen if we have to use equal to. So let's use equal to and open and close the parentheses. The first thing that I need to do is to call the oncology, right? I close the parentheses. And the next thing I can do is to call the pediatric, pediatrics. And when I do this, I can beginning to see that I'm having a problem. So I come down here, I run this code, the code blows up. It tells me that there is an incorrect syntax, and it pointed it to me where the incorrect syntax is. And then at the end of the day, I can see where it is pointing me to. Okay, let's say, hey, why do I have to put a open and close parentheses if I have to look at 2 columns, when these other places I'm not putting an open and close parenthesis. So let's say, all right, okay, let's take the open and close parenthesis off and put the question like this. We're still having a problem because it is not the right syntax. This is the wrong syntax. To get it where we are checking for more than one item, we cannot use an equal to sign. Rather, we use the in operator, open and close, and put it inside of a bracket. But what about if we say we don't put it inside of a bracket? Let's leave the bracket alone. We still have a problem because it's not the right syntax. So we open and close and enclose those items that is more than one inside of a closed container kind of thing. Then when I do that, I run this code now, I can see that I got 20 rows of different staffs that falls within that parameter. So I can say 20 rows. So far, so good? All right. So we have another one here that wants us to check for the to retrieve the procedure date, procedure description, the cost, and the post-operative instruction from the procedure table. But now they do not want us to return all the record. They only want us to limit the result that will only return where the cost is greater than 3,000. And pay attention to that word. And it's a different condition or different column. And the post-operative instruction is resume normal activities. So you can see there are 2 different things now. It is different from the first one. It's not the same thing. The first one is saying test for 1 column, but 2 conditions. Sorry, 2 items that you need to check from that 1 column. But this one is checking for 2 different columns. The first one is the cost. The second one is the post-operative instructions. So how are we going to write this? Seem a little bit tricky, but let's see how we do. We can choose it. We can choose the right decision, and that is why we are here together. So let's write select that. from. We go into the table, we call procedure, DBO, say DBO dot procedure. But now the procedure will have a problem. If you see the video one, I explained this. So we're going to put a square bracket, open and close it to enclose it inside of an open and close bracket. So at this point, if I run this code, I can see the columns that are inside of this table. And the columns that I need for this particular requirement are just few of them. The first one, they are looking for the procedure date. The procedure date. Procedure date. They are looking for procedure, the procedure description. Procedure description. And they're looking for the cost. And they're looking for the post operative instruction. And when I run this code now, I can see that I have 40 rows. Now, they want me to limit the record to only return where the cost is greater than 3,000. So I can come down here and say where cost is greater than 3,000. But remember, this is our cost column. When we run this code for greater than 3,000, we are not expected to see 1,002, 1,500. We're expected to see these guys, but we're not expected to see these guys. So we'll take those guys out. So at this point, we can run it. When we run this code, we got 11 rows for this. 11 rows. Now, on top of these 11 rows that we have, the conditions is not complete. One at a time. The condition is not complete. They want us to, they said where it is greater than 3,000, and so that means there are two conditions that we need. The first one has been captured with 11 rows returned. The second one now say and, so that means I need another way to tie this. And can be seen as where the two conditions needs to be evaluated to be true before the result can come. Now take for example, you want to apply for a higher education. Let me just make something up, your master's degree. That master's degree that you're looking to apply for, the requirement is that you need to have a 4.0 GPA and have completed 60 credit hours for undergrad. For this to work, you have to have these two requirements before you can get admission. 4.0 GPA and the 60 credit hours. So we have gotten one. Take this to be like the 4.0 GPA. So I have a cost greater than 3,000. Now I need to add another condition. If we look at this code, this guy is greater than 3,000, but the post operative instruction is not resume normal activities. Same thing for this guy, same thing for this guy. The one that I am seeing that said we should resume normal activities when it is greater than 3,000, I cannot see anyone here. So once we add the last code, we could end up to have a 0 record. So we say we are post operative instruction equals, they said it is to resume. My keyboard is faster than me, or me, I'm faster than my keyboard. Resume normal activities. And I close it. So with this, I'm not seeing any condition that will meet, but let's run it and so that we see what is going on. So when I run it, I can see that I have 0 record. But now, if you run something like this and you have this type of problem, you begin to get worried. Your code did not work or something is wrong. That could be, but you have to check your code, have to understand your code. If your code really did work, and sorry, if your code is the real code that is pointing to the right requirement, because for today, this result holds that there are people, 11 people, 11 costs that are 3,000, but together with the 3,000, there is no resume normal activities for today. Tomorrow could be different. And once tomorrow is different, we could get this record back, maybe to 1 or something. So that is one thing you need to know. That's why it said, understand your code, know what you're writing so that you can better interpret your intended result. So far, so good? Perfect. So I have another question here too that says to write a query that will retrieve the prescription date. Okay, we have another question here that can help us answer a different type of question, a different types of code writing. This one is, we're trying to find out, they want us to retrieve the procedure description, the cost, the duration from the procedure table, but it has to meet a specific requirement. And that requirement that we need to look at is a requirement that ensures that the pre-operative instructions are fasting or the post-operative instruction as rest and get hydrated. And also they want the cost to be less than or equal to 2,500. So those are the conditions. So let's see how we approach. If you watch the one that we wrote earlier, it says 3,000 and another condition. So, but if you see pay attention to this or and pay attention to this and. So we have additional information to take care of. So we go this, we say select star from our table, which is the DBO dot procedure, the procedure table. That is where our table is coming from. And now, once we have this, we can remember the same thing. We have to put a square bracket to surround it. Once we have this, we can run this. And this select star has helped us understand what is in the table. And once we do that, we can see the content of information that we need. But now they want us to reduce and pick only a subset. The first one is the procedure description. They want us to return the cost, different data set. They want us to return the duration. Now, once we do that, we can run this code. And this code returns us 40 rows. 40 rows. And on these 40 rows that we got, they want us to make sure we pinpoint to specific information. And the first information that they want us to make sure we align to is the pre-operative instruction. So I'll come down here, I say aware, where the pre-operative instruction, they want it to be fasting. So I can say the pre-operation should be fasting. Remember, The column name appears on the left side of the equal to sign. And now I can run this guy to see what I have. There is no pre-instruct. So at this point, we want to make sure about something. We want to try as much as we can to verify something. And that thing that we want to verify is this. We want to see what is inside of this preoperative instruction. Is it spelled as fasting or fast? Something like that, just to make sure, right? So we run select from, we say DBO. This is just we making sure that this code works, no problem. But we want to verify data, right? So we want to verify data. We come down here, we say procedure. We put a single quote around it and run this guy. So we can see that we have the pre-operative and we have equals fasting. But remember, this fasting now that they have is not just fasting. They said fasting for a specific hours, fasting for specific time, fasting for a specific time. So now at this point, we cannot say equal to, because we want to look for something that looks like fasting, not exactly fasting, because we do not have it. So we want to look for something that looks like fasting. So in SQL, there is something called like. This like is like a wildcard that we can use to filter or check for something. And it goes like this, a single quote, and inside of it, we have either 1% sign or we have a 2% sign. Now, the 1% sign and the 2% sign works like this. Take, for example, earlier on the video, I told you my name is Jonathan. Is Jonathan. Now, if it is not only Jonathan that is in this, if I'm looking for where the name starts, where the name starts with a specific string, I can put that string that I am trying to check, like a wildcard, remember. I can put that string that I am trying to look for in front of the percent sign. So like this, or like this. So now SQL will go and say wherever the column, so this one now will be a column name. So where the column name, like something that starts with Jonathan, because it will see Jonathan first before it sees the percent sign. So that means it is looking for something that starts with Jonathan. So this one, I can make a note here and say start. But if at the end of the day, I want to check for where it ends with Jonathan, I can come down here and move the percent. Oh, remember, yeah, I can come down here and move the percent sign to the beginning of that particular string. So when the string is at the begin, when the percent sign is at the beginning of the string, I am telling the string to say it ends with Jonathan. So when I'm looking for something that starts, the string is in front of the percent sign. When I'm looking for something that ends, the string is at the back or after the percent sign. But if I'm looking for something that contains, something that is embedded, for example, I am looking for a name that starts with NA. At this point, I can come down here. I have 2% sign. I can come down here. Let me say something that contains Jonathan. I can come down here and say, I'm looking for something that contains Jonathan. So I have a percent sign in front and in back of that particular string. So this one, let me address this guy. This one is looking for something. So I'll say column name. I say column name contain Jonathan. It contains that string that I am looking for. So with this, I can come down here and reevaluate my condition that I have here. Rather than me doing equal to, because there is nothing equaling fasting, but I have something that says fasting for specific period of time. So I want to look for something that starts with fasting. So I can come all something that contains fasting or something that ends with fasting. They just said so where this instruction is fasting, right? So I can come down here and say where it contains. So I put a percent sign in front and I put a percent sign at the back. Remember, it gives me 0 role earlier, but now if I run it, I still get 0 role. Where the okay, let's check the code again. I think we saw something that has something called fasting. So I call a procedure. I can copy this code from here. Paste it here. And if I run the code one more time, I can see it says fasting. So the pre-operative instruction is saying fasting. Aha, see, I didn't get it. I talk about it, but I didn't take it off. So I have to take the equal to sign and I say live, right? I say like, and we run this code. Remember, it was 0 before when we run it, but now when we run it, we have everything from 40, we have 22 rows. And we have returned only where the prescription tells us that, sorry, the procedure tells the patient that it is only for fasting. And when we run it, we got 22 rows. So that is how we work on things when we are not sure of the exact information that we are working on. Work on the last question of our workbook. They want us to check and retrieve list of appointments. This is list of appointments. Appointments that fall within a certain range of appointment date. So for example, if I go into my select statement to look for the appointment table, and I say DBO dot appointment table, I can see something that looks like an appointment date. So they want me to check for appointments that falls within this specific date. So if I come down here, I say where the appointment date is. Now, pay attention. This is where we write something called, we use a word called between, where the appointment date is between a certain date. We say where it is between September 15th and, because it's a between, right? And it falls within this date, which is October 1st. So if we run it, we can see that these are the appointments that fall within those specific dates. So we're able to extract the data for this particular date. And this is how we work with the where clause. But yes, there are other things we can do to this where clause, but this is just the beginning, walking us through, helping us gain confidence in our SQL code. And as we go, we're going to be talking about functions, we'll be talking about subqueries and other advanced to other intermediate to advanced kind of code writing to understand data and extract those informations. And that is what we can see, and those are the things that we can do with our SQL. So welcome back. Like as you see, it is very easy, it is very understanding, but the secret here in writing this code is that we are doing every requirement one step at a time. We are not trying to write the whole code in a whole, or like a one-time thing. We are doing it one at a time so that as we run one, we write one, we check that particular set of code that we write, so that when we begin to add other components to that particular code and something begins to break, we know the last thing that we touched, so that we can go back immediately, not go back in time, but go back one step and say, what did I just add to this code that made it fail? Then you begin to tweak it, but don't run the whole code all at once. Write your select star to understand what is inside of the table. Understand that your where clause, the left side of the equal to sign is always the column. Then your condition comes. If your condition evaluates to be true, the where clause will return it. If it evaluates to be false, it will return you a blank record. Now, if you return a blank or a zero record, it's still not a bad thing, but you just need to ensure and be confident that what you selected or what you wrote is the right thing. Then you say, okay, today there is no data, it is zero rows. Tomorrow might change because the data is changing. So those are the things we want to understand. Please stick around. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification button, because we'll be bringing you more videos of SQL, how to write SQL more detailed, in depth, because we'll be working with functions where we'll talk about string functions, date functions, aggregate functions. We'll do a whole lot of analysis work with those. So stick around, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you, and bye-bye.